I've been accused of having the idea of having this program this evening, so I'll accept responsibility for that. Are you able to hear pretty well?
Yes.
I'm hearing the marvelous air conditioning in the back of me, but I just want to open in a few minutes, and then of course Michelle Gladden is our moderator, so she will take it from there. How many of you have this sheet that we handed out that has some pictures on it? Do you have this in front of you?
Yeah.
Because I want to begin there, and I've got a wonderful young man sitting next to me, because I'm going to ask him to read a bit of scripture that sort of says why I am doing what I'm doing. But let's just look at that sheet first. Of course, you see there at the top the three wonderful presenters, marvelous pictures that they are applying for Hollywood kinds of things. Pictures in there. You'll see them in a movie soon. Then, of course, you see, of course, there at the bottom right, that's Gil Caldwell. That's me with Jesse Jackson. That was in 1971. And that was my first arrest in New York City. So there we were coming out of court having been released. But the thing I want to call your attention to that says a lot about what we're doing this evening is that you see unity in the community.
Yes.
Unity in the community. My wife and I came to Asbury Park about 10 years ago. And when I came here, I realized that there was a tract between East and West Side. I realized that Asbury Park was not quite as inclusive in terms of activity as I thought it was. And so I asked someone, actually my youngest son, who is an engineer, but sometimes enjoys drawing. I told him about Asbury Park. He lives down in Maryland, and I said, you know, what would you do to sort of capture the Asbury Park that I've found myself in? And this is sort of what he did. You see, don't you? You see the tracks separating west from east. But one of the things is that you who are creative, it would be interesting sometimes for you to sort of write your own description. Is that the sun going down, or is that the sun going up? Does that mean that that is descriptive of the Asbury Park that's on the rise? And so I've got this on the back of this T-shirt that I'm wearing, and so that's what I brought. And there is a bit of scripture that some of us know. We're in church. I mentioned to the pastor that I brought my Bible tonight. I'm a Methodist, even though now I have a relationship with Second Baptist. He was a little surprised that a Methodist knows what the Bible is. but how many of you know that bit of scripture in Ezekiel that talks about the dry bones? That talks about the dry bones. And there's a wonderful spiritual that has emerged from those bones. That's one of the things that I want to talk to my younger preachers about. Why is it that we've shelved the African American spirituals? Is it that they don't have any beat, or is it something else? But it seems to me that those spirituals are built on the Hebrew Bible, and the song "Them Bones" is built on that. But I want this young man to read the first 7 verses of the 37th chapter of Ezekiel, and that's sort of the setting for what we're going to be doing tonight. And I'll say a quick word and then hand it over to our moderator. So, young man, what's your name? Robert. Robert is an actor. He's a thespian, and he's going to be a preacher. And this is the first time. So, Robert, when you read that, do you want to stand up, or you want to hold the mic, or how do you want to handle it? Looks like you're very confident. I wish I could be that confident.
Yes.
Marvelous. Go ahead, Robert. You want to hold it up? So you okay.
The hand of the Lord was upon me.
No, be sure to speak right, nice and loud. Okay.
Scream. The hand of the Lord was upon me and carried me out in the spirit of the Lord and set me down in the midst of the valley which was full of bones, and caused me to pass by them round about. And behold, there were very many in the open valley, and lo, they were very dry. And he said unto me, Son of man, can these bones live? And I answered, O Lord God, thou knowest. Again he said unto me, Prophesy upon these bones, and say unto them, O ye dry bones, hear the word of the Lord. Thus saith the Lord God unto these bones, Behold, I will cause breath to enter into you, and ye shall live. And I will lay sinews upon you, and will bring up flesh upon you, and cover you with skin, and put breath in you, and ye shall live. And ye shall know that I am the Lord. So I prophesied was commanded, and as I prophesied, there was a noise, and behold, a shaking, and the bones came together, bone to his bone.
Amen. Let's give him a hand. Thank you very much. And that song, that spiritual, has these words. How many of you know that spiritual? The bones. It talks about the toe bone connected to your foot bone connected to your ankle bone connected to your leg bone connected to your knee bone connected to your thigh bone connected to your hip bone connected to your backbone connected to your shoulder bone connected to your neck bone connected to your head bone. My brothers and sisters, the Asbury Park that I arrived in was a disconnected Asbury. That the bones were not in touch with each other. That there was east, there was west. But I discovered as an African American that even within the African American community, that there were disconnections. And so I call this, and what I've been trying to do, I call myself in Asbury Park an equal opportunity critic and cheerleader. And so what I'm trying to do this evening is to simply, here are young people who have been abroad, who've done international things. How does that fit into Asbury Park is what we are about. And so having said that, I'd like us to just have a few moments of silence, and then I will hand this over to our moderator. But I'd like us, first of all, to remember the name Heather Heyer. Do you know that name of the person who was killed in Charlottesville? Keep her in your mind, the people who were injured. But also let us remember those 13 people who were killed in Barcelona and the hundreds of people who were injured. But let's just sort of be quiet, be reflective, be meditative as we remember them and remember the struggles for justice. Amen and amen.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. I'm so pleased to see all of you here. And thank you, Reverend Colwyn, for inviting me and the pastors. So we're going to get started this evening. I'm going to start by letting each of the pastors introduce themselves and telling a little bit about their backgrounds, and then we're going to come back around and hear a little bit about their trips, okay? So we'll go around back. Ryan, why don't you get us started?
Hi, y'all. My name's Ryan. I'm originally grew up in Texas, so I say y'all a lot. And I moved up here to go to Drew Theological School, where I'm a current student with Nicole. And I'm currently the pastor of Ballard United Methodist Church over on 4th Avenue, where I co-pastor with Pastor Kaylin Adams. And I am delighted to be here and invited.
Hello, everyone. Hello. My name is Nicole Harris. I am an associate minister at St. John AME Zion Church in Lakewood, New Jersey, but my roots run deep here at Second Baptist. This is the church that I grew up at, and my family has attended now for 4 generations. And Ryan and I are classmates, yes, at Drew University, where we're studying for our Master of Divinity degree, and I am a lifelong resident of Asbury Park and proud of it.
Hello, I am Samaj Van Zant, and I have the distinct honor and privilege of pastoring this group of people here at Second Baptist Church. I am from New Orleans, so I slip up and say y'all and accents and everything else too. But my family's in Houston now after Katrina. So, but yeah, I am just excited and glad that you all are here and excited to talk about my travels.
Okay, so these 2 divinity students, graduate students, travel to South Africa this summer, correct? So we're going to let each of them speak for about 5 minutes, 5 or 6 minutes on their experience, and then we'll pass it on to Pastor Van Zant, who traveled to Israel. And then I'll field a few questions. I'll ask some, and I'll let you all ask some, and then we're going to break into little groups. I'll give you a couple of questions to discuss, and then we'll come back. Okay, so this should move along pretty quickly and smoothly. Here we go.
Telling a preacher they only have 5 minutes. It's going to be interesting. See how we do.
Notice I said quickly.
That's right. So I thought the best way for me to do this is to just tell you some stories. I have 2 stories that I'd like to share tonight. The first one was one of the things that we did on our trip is we went to a Shimbe church. And a Shimbe church, it's a Christian church, but it's what they call an AIC, an African Instituted Church. And so it's a Christian church, but it was African Christians who said, well, we like the Bible, we like Christianity, but we don't like that Western colonialism stuff. So we're going to form our own churches with our own traditions, and we're going to do church. And so we were privileged to be invited in, to be a part of this worship service. And we get there, and we realize that the service is taking place outside. There's not a building. And then we realize, so we're like, oh, okay, we can do this. And then we realize this is taking place kneeling on mats. Okay, do that. And then we find out that, oh, and you have to go into the center of the sacred area barefoot. And it's winter. So we keep finding surprises as we're going through the service. But perhaps the biggest surprise for me was what happened when we started to go into the sacred space. When we're starting to go through, suddenly people start separating. And they directed the men to go straight through, and the women to go around, circle around, and come in on the other side. And then as we're getting settled, the men are set up facing one direction, and then the women, though, are off to the left, but facing the men, but the men are not facing the women. But the men are facing, and who is facing the men are not women, but girls. Specifically, girls who have not yet hit puberty, the maidens. And then, as I found out later from people in our group, the women off to this side, facing the men, but who the men are not facing, were then further divided between those who are married, who sat in the front, and those who were widowed or not married, sat in the back. And then there was another group of women who were in the marked out space, but under a tree off to the side because they were on their cycle. So through this process of getting settled for the service, there were 4 different groups of women that were divided up, and me as a guy just came in and sat down. And so we go through this service. As we're going through the service, and these people are worshiping. They're worshiping with their full hearts, and the Spirit is moving. And even some people in our group said, I saw the Spirit. Some of the women in our group said, I saw this Holy Spirit there. And it was an amazing worship service. It's in Zulu, so I have no idea what is being said. But I feel the emotion and the sincerity that all the worshipers are pouring out. And they are worshiping with all their hearts God. And so the question that I came away with and wrestled, and I'm still wrestling with, how did a church, a Christian church, have a genuine encounter and worship of God in the midst of deep, deep sexism? That's the first story. My other story, we went and we visited with different people. We also, one of the people we visited with is called, I need to check my notes to get this word right, is called a Sangoma healer. And so this is a traditional African healer, but a traditional healer in the sense that he consults with the spirits of the ancestors. And over here, it's a rough equivalent of what we would think of as like a psychic or medium. And so Africans, South Africans, will go to Christian church during the day. The joke is they'll go to Christian church during the day and then go to the Sangoma at night. And they would go to the Sangoma, and he was telling us a little bit about his initiation process. And there's a lot of goat slaughtering. Lots of goat slaughtering in the initiation process. And then covering himself with the blood of the goats. And then for his final initiation, after he goes through all the training and all the tests, there's this cow, and he's kept in the house, and while this cow is outside with the other people in the ceremony, and the people in the ceremony take a spear and stab the cow in the heart. But they do it sideways so that the cow doesn't immediately die. And so, because the cow has to like struggle in its dying. It has to be a drawn out dying process. And then the Sangoma runs out of the house once the cow has been stabbed and starts drinking the blood to take in the vitality of the cow as it's struggling and dying. And I'm so glad I'm here because I get to watch all your reactions as I tell this story. And because we were having the exact same kind of reactions. And as a Christian pastor, it felt very strange to be with this guy telling how he's consulting with spirits and drinking cow's blood. And so, but for him, that's his truth. And for the Shenbei Church, the division of the women and the moderating women's body, that's their truth. And I felt, even as uncomfortable as I was, it would have felt very violent for me to go in and say, stop that. That's wrong. Because that's their culture. And my takeaway from these two stories is that when we talk about culture, we often think cultural practice, like the music we're talking about, or the type of movies we like to see, or the type of food we eat. But culture is more than that. The central piece of culture are the truths that we hold dear. That's a part of our culture. And I think part of the reason that cross-cultural work is so hard is because to step into someone else's culture means to step into their truths. And their truths probably aren't your truths. And their truths probably make you uncomfortable. And what often ends up happening is instead of dwelling in the uncomfortableness, we end up shouting at each other that you're wrong. And this isn't to say that all truth is cultural and all truth is relative. I'm a preacher and I stand for truth. That's not what I'm trying to say. But when truth gets wrapped up in culture, you can't just say you're wrong. Because you're messing with their life. The way they view themselves, the way they live, the way they understand themselves. And to just shout, you're wrong, is violent. And God must have been at work, because today I stumbled across the story I've heard before of Daryl Davis. Daryl Davis is an African-American blues singer who has made it his mission to befriend KKK members. Not to change their mind, not to argue with them, but just be their friend. And he's gotten a lot of slack, a lot of pushback from this, a lot of criticism. A lot of people call him an Uncle Tom. But he has in his house hundreds of hoods that people have given to him because they have left the KKK, not because he argued or tried to change their mind or convert them, but just because he was their friend. And that's way over my time, so I will pass it on.
Thank you. That was very well said. So important.
So Ryan and I were together on our trip. I saw that too, yes. Mom, you're not allowed to ask questions. Okay. Only my mother, right? Okay, I'm sorry.
You will in a minute.
I love you, Mom. I'm sorry. I didn't be rude. Okay, so Ryan and I were on the same trip, and I do want to talk about the experience with the Shanbei Church. And I, too, very much saw the same things he saw and felt that, too. So I walk in, and I had the same dress on I have on right now because we were going to church. But I knew that we might have to take off our shoes, so I did wear flip-flops. But so when we got there, I didn't bring anything to cover my head. So the lady gave me a piece of material, said, "Cover your head, please." I said, "Okay." I put a little turban thing and to cover my head real quick. And then when I walked in the circle, I did not expect them to separate us like that. So they said, "Are you married or single?" I said, "I'm single." They said, "Sit there." I said, "Okay." So we sat in the single section. And I did too realize the maidens were sitting further from us. And they were covered, completely covered in sheets so that you couldn't see them at all. So it was just a bunch of young girls covered completely. Like they were kneeling and you couldn't see anything. Kind of like what we would, like if we put a little sheet over our kids to be a ghost and poke the eyes, like that around the whole thing. So it was really, for me, an awesome experience. And what I remember most about that worship experience was how they set up the holy space. So it was big white stones in a circle. And then in the middle of the circle was stones on top of each other, like maybe like 5 of them up on top of each other. And what it put me in the mindset of is when we read in the scripture about how whenever they went to a new place, they would set up an altar to God and they take rocks and set up the altar. I said, man, that's what they must have looked like in the Bible. You know, that's what altars looked like before we made them elaborate. You know, they were just some stones on top of each other. So that was an awesome experience. Very different. I had to think to myself going in, you know, when in South Africa, do as the South Africans, as you know, when in Rome, do as the Romans. Because I would have been, if I had walked into a church here in Asbury Park and somebody asked me if I was single and married and told me to sit somewhere, I would have been like, what? You know, but I'm there, I'm like, okay. Another experience we had that was, so while we were there, we were studying at the University of KwaZulu-Natal in Pietermaritzburg, South Africa. And we took maybe 3 classes while we were there. And they allowed us to sit in on this cafe that they were having about the Truth and Reconciliation Committee. That it was like it's been 24 years, I think, since they had the Truth and Reconciliation Committee. So what that was, and Ryan, if I mess up at any point, just correct me. But it was South Africa's attempt to explore truth and to bring reconciliation out of it. But what we realized in sitting in the cafe was that there were very mixed feelings about how that happened, how that Truth and Reconciliation Committee happened. So basically what happened was that that people would be able to get on the stand and testify about the crimes that they committed during apartheid. And as they explained it to us, they said they were like hundreds, if not thousands, of people that would show up to court that day to hear these testimonies. But the courtroom was pretty much filled with all black South Africans. So you might have a white person on the stand. Well, basically, you have a white person on the stand doing their, spilling out their soul and telling what they did. But then every person who testified got immunity. So there were mixed feelings about that. Okay, they spoke their truth, but now they're getting off. There is no justice. So, and so it was kind of like, well, what was all of this for? If we were just going to hear thousands and thousands of people admit to committing crimes and they don't serve any kind, there's no kind of penalty for the crimes that they've done. So, and there were a lot of people at that cafe, and you could tell that, especially for me with the younger students there, they wanted something more. And I don't know if I could put my finger on it to say, you know, I knew what they wanted, but they were just like, that wasn't justice. And we want justice, or we want, you know. So I think I learned a lot about that, and I guess we'll talk about it more because I don't want to put it all into my 5 minutes, but I'm going to hurry up. Okay, so quickly, this is the last experience that I had and I wanted to share. So what's the name of it again? The memorial? Voortrekker. Okay, so there's a memorial called the Voortrekker Memorial in Pretoria, South Africa. And what it is basically is it's a monument that celebrates the settlers, or those who colonized South Africa. But it was kind of, for me, it was like a celebration of genocide. So I wasn't going in like I got to the monument like, I am not in the mood for this day that I was going to go here. So I'll be honest with you, I just had certain feelings about it. And especially when I read the plaque outside that said the settlers, they had prayed to God and asked God, give us this land and we'll worship you. But didn't know about how they went about getting that land, killing and slaughtering black South Africans. I wasn't feeling it. So I was standing outside, everybody was going in, I was standing outside like, I'm not going in. Okay, so I'll sit out here. I'll see y'all when y'all get out. You know, I don't feel like celebrating this today. So I'm just being honest. I don't know. I was in my feelings. So so I was standing out there, and I had went up to one of the monuments. I'm like, well, I might as well read these plaques around here. So I was going up to a monument to read, and a lady came up to me, and she said, do you know what this monument means? I said, no. I said, but I'm reading some of it. I'm kind of getting it. And she explained to me what the monument was. She was a white South African woman. And I asked her, because they explained to us there was a difference between Africana and African. And African is a black, indigenous black people in South Africa. Afrikaners are white South Africans who descended from Dutch and settlers. So I asked her, I said, are you Afrikaner? So she said, yes. And I said, oh, okay. And she said, I came here today to pray. And I was like, y'all look at this monument religiously? Right? So I didn't know. So she was like, no, she said, it's not a religious monument. She said, but I came here to pray today, she said, because I understand that everything that happened in my country was not right. And she said, so I come here to pray and to repent. And so she asked me if she could pray with me. Her name was Rhiannon, and I took a picture with her. But when she prayed with me, honestly, I felt that weight lifted, and I was able to go into the monument and to see it, and I said, you know, I thought about it's important to see both sides of the history of this country, you know. But it was, and I thought about it, saying, you know, if that can go away just like that, what could happen if we come together as a community to pray together and to say, okay, we know some things happen and we're not right, but we're here right now standing at the foot of this monument. Let's pray. So that was a special moment for me. Okay.
You notice how I said 5 and they took 10? I know my preachers. But no, please don't apologize. I wish we had more time.
That's not working now.
The mic?
Yeah. It's not working.
Hello? Hello? No, we can speak loud, right? That's what I told you. I told you we could hear you. There's that one. Thank you. I said no.
right. So I had a chance to go to Israel. I went a little bit in a different direction than Nicole and Ryan did. So I took a group. So I've gone 4 times. This is my 4th time going. So some of the pictures you'll see will be from different times. But one of the things that there's some really nice and great stuff in Israel, because there are places that are holy to us and holy to different faiths. Right there in Jerusalem, the center of Israel, is holy sites for both Christian, Muslim, Aramean, and Christian, Muslim, Aramean, and Jewish. Yeah, right. All of these religions are right there, and they have holy sites that are there. The interesting thing for me was that some of these sites, some of the same sites, had different meanings. Right? Some of the same sites had different meanings for different people, and for different people of different faiths. And so I'm gonna flip through a couple pictures, and then it's really at the end, since I only got 5 minutes. The preacher 5 minutes. Oh, I got 8. Oh, don't tell me 5, and I'll take 8, 10. You know. Just a couple things, right? This is Israel. It is just bigger than New Jersey, actually. So it's almost about the same size. But one of the things that was striking to me was that it's 75% Jewish, 14% Arab Muslim, and only 2% Christian, right? And so it's really a place where, and it has gone through lots of turmoil over the ages. I mean, for thousands of years, Jerusalem has flipped, different rulers and different everybody. I think the longest one was the Ottoman Empire that ended in 1917, and of course then we had the war that came, and then in 1947, and so on and so forth. I visited. This wasn't the last. This was my December trip. I visited Hope Secondary School. We did a lot on my trip in 2014, where we crossed the borders a lot. And that was a very disturbing thing, because here it is, there is, it's almost like if they were to put a wall up on Ridge Avenue. Right now, you can drive from Asbury Park to Neptune and not even know that you entered into another town. But in the same way, these people are living in the same area, Palestinians and Christians, and they have erected this huge wall. And you can't see over it, and I have more pictures later. You can't see over it, and it's just a big reminder to say you're not welcome here, right? And then to get, if you're a Palestinian or a person whose skin has been kissed by the sun, to get from one side to the Palestinian side to the Israeli side, you're treated like cattle. And I'll show you that later. But Hope Secondary School is one of those founded by the Mennonites, and one of they're committed to a unique vision based on Christian values of love, peace, tolerance, human dignity, and justice. And the amazing thing is, a lot of schools exist like this, but on the Palestinian side. On the Israeli side, they're trying to figure out, how can we take over more? How can we be more dominant? How can we, assert our power more? But here, on the Palestinian side, was a lot that dealt with the, trying to rectify or find peace with the Israelis. And then there was a Center for Disabled Children. One of the things they do is make baskets of all sizes as a way to, and they sell them as a way to raise money for those children who have been disabled and most likely orphaned. There's also the Sabeel Center we visited, and their mission is to strive towards theological liberation through instilling the Christian faith in the daily lives of those who suffer under occupation, which it is, violence, injustice, and discrimination. Right? So this again is on the Palestinian side. I threw in some pictures just to break up the presentation. So this is Dominic Flevitz, which is the place where Jesus wept. And this is at right as you go down Palm Sunday, and the place where he wept over this place where Jesus wept. And of course, this is the window looking out, and you can see the Dome of the Rock. So this is all Jerusalem back here. But one of the things that I thought about was, in the midst of the discrimination and the violence and the oppression that's going on, that I believe that they erected this chapel to say that this is the place where Jesus wept. But I believe that Jesus is still weeping because of the way that they are separating and what he lived for and what he died for, and how people are still being treated despite the love that he tried to show and instill in people's lives. This is in the Garden of Gethsemane, right? This is an olive tree from the time of Jesus, when Jesus was there and he prayed and the disciples fell asleep. But you see here, they're made out of rocks piece because there's still so much turmoil going on. One of the things that's in the Garden of Gethsemane is, I thought I had the picture on here, but it's called the Church of All Nations. And it's so interesting that in the Garden of Gethsemane, the place of the pressing, the place of being oppressed, and you know, because you get olive oil by pressing the olives continually. And so in the place of pressing and hard times is where they built the Church of All Nations. And so really it's symbolic, because it says that wherever all of the nations come together, it's going to be hard, it's going to be tough, but if we stick it out, there's a valuable product that'll come out at the end. Oh, this was fun. One of the greatest privileges as a pastor is I get to baptize people, and these were some new converts. Actually, they were around, and so I got to do it. This is Pastor Aaron Gibson from Second Baptist Church of Long Branch. Yeah, so he came along with me on the trip. Oh, here's the Church of All Nations, which is this beautiful facade, right? And the Garden of Gethsemane sits right down here. And then, of course, you have this sign up here, which are two deers. And you remember Psalm 42 is the deer panted for the water brook. So does my soul long for you. And this cross represents the Word of God. And just essentially saying that if all of the people of all of these different faiths would go to their Word, which a lot of it is very similar, right? Then we will find peace and we will find and justice for those who are being oppressed. I just put this on there because I really like this altar, and I was like, if I ever had a chance to build one, you know, if second let me tear down what's upstairs and put something new, you know, it would look like this. Like, I want a boat. No. Some of the things, so Palestinians are really oppressed. One of the places we visited was the Tent of Nations. And this is, you see they put the slogan is people building bridges. One of the things that I have to show, and we can pass it around, is on this map, you will see, and I have something on here too, but you can see on this map is, and I'll pass it around, the purple places is the Palestinian land. Now Palestinians occupied all of this until 1947, we know. And then in 1947, they came in the War of Independence. Of course, all of that drama and carnage happened, and the Palestinians have now been pushed out of the land. I'm going to pass this around and challenge you to find the purple shaded area, because it's only the purple shaded area where the Palestinians live. All right, and so the Tent of Nations is a place where this was Palestinian land, and one of the things that was so disheartening was that on this land, the Jews, or the Israeli government rather, continues to try to take over the Palestinian land. And even though these people have the deed for the land, the Israeli government refuses to recognize it. And this happens not just on this property, but it happens in many places around in Israel. And they take it over and they build settlements. And of course, the money goes back to the Israeli government instead of helping to build for the Palestinian people. So one of the things, we all took a chance and we planted a tree. So this was me pickaxing that hard ground. But we all took a chance who were there, and we built and we planted trees as a way of, and planted olive trees. And we know the olive tree and olive wood is a symbol of peace. And so that's what you see us doing here. Here is the Palestinian loss of land, right? Where here it is in 1946, before the war. 1947, they still held a little bit, you know. Then 1967, and now 2010, and in 2017 you can actually take off all of the land above there, right? And so it was just this continual pressing and oppressing of a people on whose land. Where does that sound familiar to? United States of America, right? Except this is more recent. right? This is, and now this is amazing. This is the, this sits over the Dome of the Sepulchre, and I just put this picture in because the sun still shines right down into the empty tomb where Jesus was resurrected from. Now we get to the walls from Bethlehem side on the Palestinians. You can see these people, regular sized people, and then all of this wall, right? And this is some of the graffiti that they put on there in protest. Right, love wins. This is more. They put big Christmas tree in the middle of the wall, as to say, you know, the spirit of Christmas has been walled in. This is, what is this? If you didn't see the people on there, you would think that they were animals, or that this was fit for animals. But every day, Palestinians who go to work in Israel, or whatever land Israel has claimed, they have to stand in these long lines for hours at a time, and they're being watched as though they're prisoners. And you see them standing there, and above these rafters right here, you have people, you have Israeli army who are standing there with M16s pointed down at them, as though they're just, and ratchet criminals even coming through one of the checkpoints. This is just a natural pose, right? Let me shoot you if you decide to look wrong or sneeze or something, anything I don't like. And so this is every day for Palestinians, right? And so one of the places we visited, and I'm almost done, is the Mar Ellis School in Ebeling, where it was created by Bishop Elias Shakur, who wrote a book entitled Blood Brothers. That is simply amazing, and I'm going to recommend this to each and every one of you all. It's an easy read, but a powerful read. And he wrote Blood Brothers, and this school is now a world famous place for peacemaking. One of the things that his father, Michael Shakur, told him that really continues to resonate and resonates throughout this whole book is that the Jews are our blood brothers, right? And he said that we come from the same blood, we bleed the same. Everything is the same except for our beliefs and the way that we look. And so he says that we must found a peace founded on justice and righteousness. This is Bishop Elijah Shakur, and that's him signing my book, just in case y'all try to take it. You know, I want you to know, right? But listen to this, this excerpt from his book. He says, upon my return, he lived in several places. He's an Episcopalian priest. He said, upon my return to Paris, I was haunted by the mystery that had opened itself to me on the train into West Germany. What was the true story of Palestine? I was aware as never before that people in the West held a view that went something like this. The Jewish people, having suffered tremendous persecution, needed a haven, a national homeland. Their Zionist leaders had chosen the quote-unquote uninhabited land of Palestine. Supposedly, the surrounding Arab nations were naturally antagonistic and jealous that the Jewish settlers had turned a wasteland into a paradise. They had risen unprovoked against the Jews, forcing them to fight a valiant war of independence in 1948. But I had grown up in Palestine in those years, and that was not the full story, nor was it especially correct. I had witnessed a terrible, ironic twist of history in which the persecuted became the persecutor. As one of its victims, I had seen the cruel face of Zionism. Now I determined to find out how a peaceful movement that had begun with a seemingly good purpose to end the persecution of the Jewish people had become such a destructive and oppressive force. And how many times do things start out with a good purpose, but they get twisted and they become a destructive and an oppressive force? And there are many times where people who say we're going to do something and they have all of the right intentions, but along the way they get influenced in the wrong way. And so Elijah Shakur has some questions that I just want to put that he has in his book. One, he says, for the Jews, do you need to produce millions of victims from among your people to convince the world that others have hated you? Then he asks to the Palestinian people, do we need to produce more victims, he's Palestinian, more martyrs and more humiliation in order for the world to wake up and see the truth? Then he says, for the Western world, that's us in the U.S. and abroad, how can you take on yourself the right to decide who is the terrorist? I believe for Asbury Park, how do you treat your blood brother and sister? Thank you.
Thank you, Pastor. Okay, I'm going to turn it over to Reverend Caldwell, Reverend Gill, for a few words.
Just let's give them another hand. This is powerful. How many of you were here for the James Baldwin movie? Some of you saw that. That dealt with what we are and who we are as individuals. And the fact of the matter is that that's going to be resonating with all of us until we die. This whole question of what does it mean to be black? What does it mean to be white? What does it mean to be in relationship, etc.? And so that I find now, as I hear this, was a very individualistic approach to our topic. But tonight, it's as though the Spirit has moved us to have this kind of presentation, because look at what we've heard and what's going on in the USA. It just seems to me that the message that you bring back from South Africa and the message you bring back from Israel is relevant for today. On culture, for culture. Now, I was just interested in terms of what the two of you were saying about South African culture, and just wondering how do we apply what you experienced there to the whole matter of Confederate monuments, etc. How do you do that? How, in fact, and then this powerful illustration of a person I've never heard of. You're saying a black singer, is he?
Yeah.
The black singer who identifies with the KKK, and I guess his one-on-one relationships has created some transformation among them. But my concern is that we are at a very pivotal point in our nation. And you see, at 83 years old, as 83-year-olds, I've seen a lot. But it seems to me that we are at a place, obviously, where we've never been before. But with all of the awfulness, there is a possibility that the Creator has unveiled some stuff that we can now work on. I don't want to go too long, and I'm a preacher too, but you know. but I found myself writing that in many ways, some persons are responding understandably in negative ways to Donald Trump, because Donald Trump has clumsily, I can't pronounce the word, that Donald Trump has pulled the covers off of what's always been there.
Yeah.
And therefore, there are some people who don't like the fact that Donald Trump is not being sophisticated enough in his racism, that it's out there. And that, I think, can be a blessing.
Yes.
That, in fact, Donald Trump is simply unveiling what's been here from the very get-go. And it's important for us to understand. And so one of my concerns about us responding to him individually is that we think that if we impeach Donald Trump, will sort of be like the election of Barack Obama, that if that happens, then we will be in a post-racial era. We will not.
Yeah.
And so I'm going to sort of ask us to see, how do we apply what these three gifted young people have said on the matter of culture? Do we, out of our faith or out of our democracy, have a kind of different response that we ought to make to our Confederate brothers and sisters? I mean, that's the question, you know. Do we, in addition maybe to taking down monuments, do we have to understand in more sensitive ways the fact that that is a part of their culture, and that they feel that somehow denying them the Confederacy is somehow destroying their who-ness? And how do you get at that? Then the second thing, and I finish with this, is that there is a great need both in the church, in religion, and in democracy for us to practice what we preach. And let's say that in democracy we have not practiced what we preached. But I heard you saying, that all of you, is that if we who are people of faith look at our faith stuff and practice what our faith says, then that would make a difference. For if you look at every religion has some version of do unto others as you would have them do unto you. And so I guess what I've heard in a very powerful way, and this is because I haven't been where you are, That's one of the things that young people bring that 83-year-old men don't bring, you see. You sort of see things in more positive ways because sometimes my Malcolm X comes out. Sometimes my Malcolm X comes out, even as I'm a Christian minister, you see. But it seems to me that I'm sure that there's a bit of Malcolm X in the three of you. But there is something about your faith that sort of mentions some possibilities that gives me hope at this moment in the USA. And so if you think that I'm onto something, friends, let me hear you say amen. Amen. Let's hear how they respond. Okay.
Okay, so along with that, I'd like for each of you to briefly touch on the importance. Why is it important to construct narratives about your experience here in Asbury Park? I'd like for you guys to touch on that.
Yeah, to get at the narrative question, I love that question. There's this great book out, you get a chance to read it, called The Storytelling Animal. And I cannot think of a better way of describing who we are. We are storytelling animals. You think the best way to bond with someone, to build a relationship with someone, to connect with someone else, tell them a story. You know what I did last week down at the market, down at the superstore? Do you know what happened to me? Oh, you won't believe what happened while I was on my way here, what I saw in the car. We live on stories. It's what makes us who we are. And so being able to take our experiences and to make stories, but narratives even, narratives because narratives have a point. They have a lesson. They get you somewhere. To be able to take our experiences and to create narratives out of them not only builds relationships, but moves you together into a new place. So I can't think of anything more important than building narratives and telling them. And to get at the Confederate monument situation that we're in, oh boy. I don't know if I have a good answer to this. But I do think that it's tied up with who people are. It's funny, being from Texas, I still have a lot of people on my Facebook who are from Texas. And I see a lot of Confederate flags posted. I'm going to be honest about that. And I don't know what to do about that. Sometimes I engage it. Sometimes it's just like, not today, Lord. Like, it's too much. But I think the starting point isn't maybe attacking the monuments, because when you do that, you attack the identity. But maybe trying to change the identity so that they will take the monument down with you. And to say who you are isn't actually tied up with that statue. That's a lie.
So that's sort of what you were saying, Nicole, in that experience that you had. Yeah.
I agree with Ryan. I think that who you are is not tied up in those flags and those monuments. The question, I related to the monuments that we saw. We saw a lot of monuments while we were in South Africa. Many of them were in honor of Nelson Mandela. And so you see that he is highly celebrated in South Africa. So the question about the narrative, and I'm going to go in and I'll attach it to the monument. Narratives, I think, can be used for good and for bad in my experience. I'll give you an example. So I remember not too long ago seeing a commercial. I think it was by like Governor Christie or something. It was about heroin and different drugs and everything, and how it was a sickness, and they had these actors in there, and they were going, "This is a sickness. You can't do it by yourself. You need help and everything." And they had people that got up there and said, I'm on heroin, and I need help. I was on painkillers. I was in one gentleman said I was on crack. And I said to myself, now the narrative sure has changed, because in my community it was a crime. But now it's a sickness. So the narrative changes depending on who's telling it. So that's in the negative. I think the positive about that telling your own narrative is that you expose the people to your truths, and that can help with us coming together, I think, because your truth and my truth, sometimes, like Ryan said, we'll say, you're lying. It's not necessarily the person lying, it's that you haven't experienced their truth. And so their truth is, So we got to experience lots of different truths in South Africa, because we went from Soweto to Pretoria, which Pretoria is a fairly wealthy area. I guess some of the areas we reached there were. And Soweto, it was very poor, people without electricity, running water, and things like that. And both of those were true of South Africa. So if I had just seen one part, somebody would have told me, oh, it's really poor there. And I'm like, really? And I saw Soweto and I said, they're right. But then if I went to Pretoria, I'd be like, what are they talking about? So, then, both narratives are true. Now, as far as, let me bring it to Asbury Park. My narrative is different from someone who might not have grown up in Asbury. Somebody who just got here maybe last year or 2 years ago, they said, oh, it's the jumping beach town, it's really thriving, and stuff. And so, in that it is, right? And I'm not mad at that. But I was at a meeting. I can't remember if it was Madison Marquette or iStar. I want to say it was an iStar meeting at Lagusta Lounge. And they were talking about the development in Asbury Park, and they had a lot of residents there mostly. And I think me and my mom were the only 2 black people there. You were there, 3. So, and when they were talking about the development, I'm like, this doesn't include us, but it's okay. Maybe they'll have another meeting that includes us. So anyway, a gentleman from the Homeowners Association got up there, and when they were done, they said something at the very, very end about getting funding to tear down the Boston Way. And the gentleman from the Housing Association said, see, we're rising together in this town. And I said, really?
Wait.
Right, so, Sister Isis, you hold up. But I was like, wait a second. Because at that time, and this is no disrespect to our government officials, because I think there have been there's so many regimes that have come in and out of Asbury. So who started this development and didn't finish it, or they picked it up from there? I'm not going to point blame one way or the other, but to live on the west side of Asbury Park and to visit the east side of Asbury Park, you would not say we're coming up together, right? So I was like, does he go past Memorial Drive? That, so my narrative and his narrative are very different, and we both live in a very small 1.6 square mile town. So some of the things that are said are hurtful, not because somebody's trying to be disrespectful, but because they're living in their truth and they don't necessarily know mine. So even when people were running for office a few years ago in Asbury, I went to one of the debates, and one of the candidates said, I moved to Asbury Park when it was a ghost town. Right, that's what he said. This is a candidate running for city council. And I was like, how is it a ghost town if I've always lived here? And if you discovered Asbury Park, does that make you Christopher Columbus and I'm the Indian? I'm the Native American, excuse me. So that's how I felt. And I know he wasn't trying to be disrespectful, but by his own truth, I moved here when there was nothing here. That's his truth. I happen to like the beach when nothing was there. It was my own little private beach as a kid. Okay? Okay? But, so you understand me different, and very much so in South Africa as well. We could have spoken to some women, some Zulu women in Soweto, and their narrative would have been completely different from the people we talked to on the other side of South Africa. And